to India and Ireland, round Africa and back again. We don't really need to know just where we'll go. Maybe Canada, then to Brazil, then through the Alpine foothills. All I really want to know is, can we go? Oh baby, can we go? Round and around the globe.
Welcome to Take Me With You, episode 84. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
But that's not going to happen. So instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
But this summer, we are taking a bit of a break from having guests on to watch TV.
Yay!
Yep.
Cheryl, why are we taking a break to watch TV?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. Last summer, we did a little summer series of travel tips, and that was fun to talk about different aspects of travel than our interview style that we typically do.
Mhm.
And right now, this feels especially appealing because for us, it's mid-April,
Mhm.
and we are at home, working from home, everything from home, not allowed to travel or go to
Nope.
shows or anything cool that we like
Mm-mm.
because of the coronavirus. And so it seems like a great time to get caught up on some of these travel shows that I wish I watched or dream about future trips, which oftentimes includes watching a show about a place that I want to go to. So we
Yeah.
thought we would review different travel shows and just share our thoughts on them and kind of what we like and dislike about the different styles of travel shows. And there's just, as travel lovers, I just, for me, I don't really watch a lot of travel shows though. And I know,
No, I don't either, which is funny.
yeah, like we make a travel podcast and we're like, it's not really for me. We've talked about this off mic, but oftentimes I think both of us, when we go to watch something, it's more for like the entertainment. And I think that
Mhm.
travel shows oftentimes are more, can be more like the educational style, depending on the show though.
Right.
And also, like, for me, I just like, I don't think of it as an option, but sometimes my husband puts one on and I love it. And I'm like,
Yep.
oh, this is great. I love watching this. But then I'm like, okay, so the next episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, here we go. So,
Well, I think also it's changed a little bit because even just in the last 10 years with cell phones and smartphones really being a thing where you've got access to the internet while you travel, and we've talked about that a lot on this podcast, but the need to have all of this information pre-planned and to have already done all the surveying and all that sort of thing ahead of time, I think has shifted. And so I think travel shows used to be a bigger deal. Obviously, it's not quite the same thing as a travel book, but even just the number of travel websites and travel blogs and all the things, at least for you and I, we typically will start on the internet when we're
Yeah.
doing research for, not just travel, but anything.
that's very
And so
true.
I think you're right, just a shift in this, but there are some great travel shows out there.
And not all of them are that like just informational, educational thing. There are some that it's like, oh, this is for entertainment, and the
Yes.
setting happens to be in different countries or things
Yes.
like that. I was even thinking, as you were saying that like how times have changed, my mom was telling me about the original Around the World in 80 Days movie. When that came
Okay.
out, it was a big deal, and part of why it was a big deal is because they actually flew and like shot things on location, and for a lot of people that was a way they could see other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And so I watched that movie with her a couple of years ago and I was like, this is cute. And she was like, no, this is why this was such a big deal, because it wasn't easy to see footage from around the world.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, like thinking about times are a changing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Cool. So we have a list. It might change over time. So listeners will find out week to week what show we're going to talk about. But we thought we would start in our comfort zone and talk about a show that we have mentioned. I don't know if we've mentioned the show before, but we've certainly mentioned the person a lot, and that's Rick Steves.
Yes. And I've seen a lot of episodes because, well, let's be honest, I'm lazy. I would rather sit on the couch and watch a TV show than read a book. I'm so sorry. I know that is terrible and it means that my brain is mush, but that is what I would prefer to do. And so, and I think what you even mentioned about what your mom was expressing about the Around the World in 80 Days movie, being able to see a place. And yes, in travel books and on the internet, you can see pictures, but it's different, I think, to see video.
Yes.
You know, to be able to see what a place is actually like, kind of to get the vibe, I think, in a way that you can't always do otherwise.
And to hear as well. I think sounds make a really big difference too.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. So you watched most of this on YouTube, right?
Yeah, pretty much exclusively. They go through PBS, so oftentimes you can also stream them through the PBS website from whatever your local PBS station is. But Rick Steves has a YouTube channel, and he's got all of his videos for, gosh, I think he's been going at least 10 years. Let me check.
There are a lot of seasons. And
there's 10 seasons?
Possibly more than that. At least 10.
At least 10. That sounds right.
Yeah, so there's a ton of this show. It's all Europe. So we should say that up front. Rick Steves Europe, that's his jam. And he typically will the subject matter isn't always the same, but I find that he focuses on a city than on a country, it seems like. Right? Or like a region.
Yeah, it really depends. So part of it depends on how big the place is. So for a country where it's either a bigger European country, obviously we're putting this in the context of Europe, right? So we're not comparing it to, say, Russia or Brazil or the United States, right? Which are large just geographically countries. But as far as a large European country and or a lot of popular attractions, so places like Spain and England and the United Kingdom and Germany and Italy, those are all countries where he tends to do either a region or a city. But then some of them, like one of the ones I'm going to talk about today is Slovenia, he just has an episode on the entire country. And sometimes he'll do multiple countries together, depending on what it is. And there will be sometimes he's got some with themes. More recently, he's done a few more that are kind of themes related to travel. So he has one about cruising. So if you wanted to do cruising in Europe, he has suggestions about how to do that. There's also beyond just, so the actual TV show is called Rick Steves Europe. And that's the one that kind of has that plays on, PBS and things like that. But in addition to that, he has other videos through his travel organization that he does. And there's tips and tricks videos and there's orientation videos. And some of those are recorded sessions from live, basically trainings that he's done. He lives here in the Seattle area in a city called Edmonds, and their main office and headquarters is there. And they actually will do travel talks and things. And he'll fly in his experts from the other countries that live there and work there that he coordinates with and have them give travel talks. And so you can find some of that stuff online as well. But the main show that we're going to be watching and talking about is his Rick Steves Europe. And according to Wikipedia, he has 10 seasons, but that ends in the 1819 year. It looks like it started in the year 2000. Okay. So I think there is a new season that's been coming out this year, I believe, the 1920 year. So, but
that's exciting.
It's behind. But yeah, so there are a lot of episodes. Each season doesn't have the same number of episodes necessarily, but it's around between, 12 and 15 episodes per season.
And they are short. They're like a 22-minute, typically, unless it's a special. Like one of his most popular episodes is European Christmas, where he talks about different Christmas traditions in different countries. And I think that's like a 1-hour special or something like that. But really, quick watch. And I think he does a great job summarizing whatever he's talking about. And so it is kind of
Mhm.
fun just in 22 minutes to feel like you got to visit the highlights of a place.
Yeah.
So what Ryan and I chose to do is we watched the entire show in one sitting with no breaks, and now we hate Rick Steves and we never want to talk about him again.
Yep.
So good job for us.
I don't think that's what we did, Cheryl.
No. We're
We have
both
time. We
still
don't have that
working.
much
Yeah.
time.
So what we did is we each chose to watch an episode about a place that we were really familiar with.
Mhm.
And then together we watched an episode about a place that neither of us have visited that we'll
Yep.
talk about today. So I think we probably, I mean, we don't have to get into like every detail of what happened in the episode or anything, but we just wanted to give ourselves some context. And with Rick Steves, that was easier since we're both familiar with the show. But with future shows, I think that's going to help us figure out like, okay, what is the show like? And
Mhm.
how does it represent a place I've already been to? I think is interesting. And then also we're curious about like, what do you think about a place we haven't been to?
Yeah.
So you watched the Slovenia episode.
I did. Surprise, surprise. And I'll bet our regular listeners can guess which country you watched an episode from.
I watched the Madrid episode, which is obviously not a country, but he has a lot of episodes on Spain.
Yep.
And I went through on IMDb, you can view episodes in average ranking order, and the Madrid one was pretty highly ranked. And so I thought that would be a good one to watch, because I also felt like with these shows, as we talk about them, I want to watch what people consider to be really good episodes, so we can get like a good depiction of what it's like. So what did just in like without every detail of the Slovenia episode, but what did you think about it? Did you feel like it matched your experience there? Did he go to a lot of the places that you went to?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I thought I had seen this episode before, but then when I watched it, I don't know that I actually have seen the episode before because it didn't seem familiar. I think what's happened is I've read his travel book on Slovenia, and I believe that the travel book is Slovenia and Croatia together. But I think I've read that, but I guess I haven't actually watched the episode before we did this. And what's interesting is, so it's one of his earlier episodes. It looks like its original air date, according to Wikipedia, was October 23rd, 2010. So it's 10 years old. And the first time I was in Slovenia was 2009. So around the same time that he filmed the episode, as far as time goes, was a similar time when I was first also exposed to Slovenia for the first time. So I found that interesting. And I think it holds up really well.
Cool.
I think I was actually impressed with how well he represented not just the cool things to see in the country, but also the atmosphere and the people and the feeling that I think is representative of Slovenia. One of the things that I love about Slovenia is that it definitely feels European, but also feels small, and it doesn't feel super crowded as compared to a lot of other European cities. And it's been getting more and more crowded over the years, but it'll still less so than, say, like a Paris or probably a Madrid, I'm guessing. But he kind of captured that in the episode, which I thought was really fun. One of the things he did is he usually will have one or two local guides that in his video he'll talk to and have them kind of share something about the culture or the people, but they're usually locals, people who are from that area and live there. And in this one, he actually goes to their home for dinner and is actually able to see their family. So you get a little glimpse of what some of the family life is like, and asks them questions and stuff, which I think is really cool. He does hit a lot of the main things that I would say, yeah, that would be what I would recommend you go see. Yep, that's what I'd recommend you go see. One of the things he even talks about, which I think is interesting, is Slovenia has a lot of caves. And there's sort of two major caves. And one of them is advertised all throughout Ljubljana, the capital city. And that's kind of the big tourist one. And that's not the one that Rick Steves goes to. He goes to the other one, and that's actually the one that I've been to. So it was kind of interesting to see he highlighted the same one that I went to, which I think is really cool. It is a little less touristy, which is kind of one of his things. And so, yeah, I thought it was a really good episode. If you want to know how awesome Slovenia is and why you should go to Slovenia, I think his episode does a really good job of highlighting a lot of the big things. One of the things it doesn't do is it really doesn't go to the eastern side of the country very much. It stays in the western side. And I haven't been all the way up to Maribor, which is kind of the second largest city, which is over on the eastern side of the country. And he doesn't really talk about it. Doesn't really go over there or anything like that. But most of the really cool things, at least that I'm aware of in Slovenia, he highlights or talks about, which I think is really cool.
Nice. That's very cool. Is there anything that you wish he covered that he didn't?
I don't think there's anything in particular that specifically I wished. Well, I mean, he doesn't go to Cacao, my favorite ice cream restaurant in the entire world. And it's actually in the background of some of his shots. Oh, yeah. Well, because it's right there on the main, like by the center of the city. It's right there. And actually, at one point, there's a shot of people along the river at a restaurant that are eating outside, and one of them is Cacao. And so I'm like, that's Cacao. I recognize it. But and maybe they didn't want to be on it. Maybe he doesn't care about ice cream. I don't know. Maybe he had footage and it was too long for the episode and didn't include it. I don't know. I happen to love Cacao a lot, and he didn't include Cacao. But that's okay, because if you go to the main square, you'll see it. And you listen to this podcast, so you know you need to go there. And this is a thing about just Rick Steves in general that I think we've mentioned before. He's big on history and art.
Yes.
He does do a really good job of giving some of the background history for Slovenia, which I think is helpful in understanding kind of where Slovenia came from, what they're like sort of as a people group. And the country is a relatively young country. They've only been a country since, I believe, 1992. And so, I mean, obviously that's not, it's not like 5 years ago, but as far as countries go, it's not a super long time. So understanding a little bit about that background, I think, is helpful, but I don't care a ton about a lot of history. So, those things are generally not the things that are the most intriguing to me about a particular location. And it would be cool if he were to highlight some of the other more science side of things. But again, that's my bias. I think he hits some of the big ones. He talks about the Julian Alps. He talks about the Socha River. He talks about the cave. There's some other things that are kind of up in the northwestern corner that he doesn't really get to that I think are pretty cool. If you can get up to Bohinj and Vogel and some of those cool places, I think that stuff is just beautiful. But again, he only has 22 minutes. So I think for the time that he had, I think he did a good job covering some of the big sites.
Cool. That's great. And thinking about the fact that he released this episode 10 years ago, it makes sense that he would only do the country and not break it down by city or by region, because it's a younger country and it's just like you're saying, like their tourism is just kind of now happening. And so, I mean, probably a lot of people are like, haven't even heard of it, and so I don't know. It makes a lot of sense that he would maybe just spend one episode on it, versus like if he revisited, it'd be interesting if he would, highlight more of it throughout more episodes or anything.
Yeah. I mean, the entire country of Slovenia has 2 million people. Right. So it's not a large country.
Yeah.
So that's part of it too. There is less than a Spain or a Germany or a France or, one of those things. It's just a smaller region, but that's part of what I like about it. So what about your episode in Madrid?
So I watched the Majesty of Madrid episode, which aired in 2004. So earlier on in his
Season 3, it
show.
looks like. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Episode 1 of season 3. So they opened
Ooh.
with this one. And it was pretty much like my visit to Madrid. I mean, just like it was like that you could just show that video and be like, this is what my time was like in Madrid. So just watch this and then you'll know. And I mean, like, Madrid is not my favorite city in Spain. I don't dislike it, but I'm not as excited about it as some other cities. And so, I want to watch his other Spain episodes now because it'd be fun to see, like, okay, what's a region that I love that he's covered, or what's one I haven't gone to that I know I want to go to, and it'd be fun to see that. Because I haven't really watched footage from places in Spain I haven't gone to, so that could be fun to see those things. But yeah, I thought, and I mean, it's also makes sense, I guess, that it was so similar to my experience because while I was there, I did his free walking tour on his app. And so Rick Steves did give me a tour personally through recording his voice on an app that then I downloaded and listened to. But yeah, I think just it was so fun to revisit his show. His show is like reading a travel book. So it starts with like an overview of the region he's talking about, and they show a map and they talk about the districts even, and then they give an overview of what's coming. It's almost like your index, you know, or your table of contents. He gives these practical tips, which I love. He talks about like when you're actually there, what transportation should you use and how can you get around and how should you order this thing, and it's lots about like what the locals do. I think that's a big focus of his. Even like on his website when it has tips about how to dress, it's about like not standing out particularly, you know. And so like I think he does focus on that local experience, and I love that he talks to a local tour guide. I think that's so great that they get to talk about what it's like there. So yeah, in Madrid he talked about food, of course. And I love.
That's too bad. I know you don't really care about food when you travel, Cheryl.
And I was like, oh, Spanish food. And yeah, I love the amount he covers history in his show. I love it because I think I'm more into history than you are. I was not into history in school, and now as an adult, I'm like, turns out it's fascinating, and I just didn't appreciate it. But I think it's so cool how he gives the context of a place, you know, and he's like, we're going to talk about the Lisbon episode next, and he gives really interesting history about that city that makes it like, this is why it is the way it is here because of this history. And I think that that's so wonderful. Yes, he talks about the transportation there. He talks about the museums, the palace, the churro place. So that's really important. He sees flamenco, but he does mention that flamenco is not from Madrid. It's actually from another part of Spain. And so, he just tells the history of lots of like places and traditions and everything. He shows the park that I went to and really liked a lot. So I think he just does a really great highlights of Madrid. And pretty much, I mean, I also stayed with people who live in Madrid, so that part of my Madrid experience was very unique, and it was also outside of Madrid. It was in the suburbs, and that was totally different. But as far as when I went into the city, I did the main touristy things, and so it was fun. Even he shows at one of the large museums, they have Picasso's Guernica painting there, and he talks about like how that painting came about and how that influenced things, and so that was really cool. So he talks about some of the artists who are featured in the museums, and I know that how he's really museum heavy is something that you don't like so much about Rick Steves, but I love an art museum, and so for me that was really fun too.
But I would say in his show, he doesn't just do museums, right? Like his books have lots and lots of museums in them, but I think his shows do a really good job of balancing. Here's a really cool museum to see. Here's a really cool place to eat. Here's a really cool kind of natural thing to go look at. Here's an experience to have. I think he really does a good job in the show of balancing those, which I appreciate.
Yeah, he talks about entertainment. He talks about lots of things. And so and I love how how much he gets into the food talk and everything too. That's very fun for me because that's a really crucial part of my travel. So yeah. So I think we should talk about the episode that we both watched now.
Okay.
And this was
Which
really
was?
fun timing because we watched the Lisbon episode.
Lisbon.
And just recently we had Christy Bruner on, and her Wish You Were Here was a side trip that Rick Steves took in this episode. And so it was really
Yes.
fun to see. Let's see.
It looks like
Sintra.
this was episode 3 of season 10 from
Oh, great.
October of 2018. So this is one of the newer episodes.
Oh,
so
nice.
yeah, so we've got a kind of a range sort of what we've watched in the whole series of things. But yes, what did you say the name of the city was?
Sintra.
Sintra, yes.
And it's outside of Lisbon. Looks like a really easy day trip. And she, Christy was sharing it with us about all the palaces and castles there.
Yeah.
And then it was so fun to see footage of that. And
It was. I
Yeah.
will say that in the Rick Steves episode, which he doesn't talk about Sintra until the end. And when he mentions that he's going there, and it's like, oh, that was the place that Christy mentioned. I'm really excited to see it. And he showed some video and then talked a little bit about it. If I had heard of it only from his video, I don't think I would be as excited as when we talked about it with Christy on the episode.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think she gave a better summary.
Yeah. And even
than
just
he
the
did.
pictures that I found online, like he only shows like a couple of the places and only a few bits and pieces of it. And then now I'm trying to remember, I feel like he went into the history of it and it was all about the history,
Yes.
which makes it less exciting to me. Not
Mm.
because I think history isn't important, but if that's the only reason that it's interesting, then I'm
Yeah.
like, meh, oh, it's a history museum, whereas looking at it and seeing what they look like and the views that you can see from there and all of that, like that stuff is really cool. So I was a little disappointed in that representation.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I haven't been there, so I don't
Yeah.
actually know what it's like.
Yeah, I think what I appreciated about his history talk there was when he described why the Penna Palace is the way it is, and that they pulled from, like, this king wanted different styles in different areas and everything, and that makes so much sense because it looks like a movie palace where the artist doesn't really know what architectural aspects are from what time periods.
Yeah.
And so it makes so much sense then being like, why does that look so different than a lot of palaces? It's like, oh, because it's a whole mishmash of things, and that's what the king wanted. And so that piece of history was really interesting. For me, I've learned a little bit about the history of the Moors in Spain, and I've gotten to see Moorish castles in Spain, Moorish ruins, and Moorish architecture, and learned about that. And so it was interesting that when he showed 2 different Moorish castles, and then you could see tile work in a couple places where I was like, oh, yep, that looks North African, that looks Moorish. And so that was really fun for me to get to see like a similarity there. So one of my first notes I made is that it looks like San Francisco, and then right after that he was like, it really has a San Francisco feel to it, and I was like, okay, cool, because there's a bridge that straight up looks like a shot of the Golden Gate Bridge, but with like a different background. And then he's like talking about the hills and the trolleys, and then he was like, yeah,
and there's a funicular. He talks about a funicular.
When that went on the screen, I was like, what is that trolley doing? And I was like, it's not a trolley, it's a funicular.
And now you know the difference.
I know, so fun. But what I love about the history of this episode is that he talks about this massive earthquake that pretty much just took out the city and caused them to rebuild. And that's why there are very few old buildings. And that's why the city is so planned and everything.
It's really so funny because to me, earthquake, oh, that's not history. That's science.
Ryan.
Which, yes, history. There is definitely.
It's history.
Well, it's both, Cheryl.
It's science history.
Yeah. So, but yes, like I will say that that part was definitely interesting. I agree. It's like, oh, interesting. That's why the buildings are, the age that they are, and they're all similar ages.
Mm-hmm.
We both picked this because we've never been to Lisbon,
Yeah.
right? And we don't know a lot about it already.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a big reason why we picked this episode, because we wanted
to
episodes,
learn something.
places
Yeah.
we've been and places we
Mhm.
hadn't. And I will say, with the exception of the ending, only because I'd already heard about Sintra, I was really intrigued about Lisbon from this episode.
Mm,
The
mhm.
ending was a little disappointing, but the rest of it, I was like, that looks like a really cool city. There's some really
Yeah.
cool things, really cool areas to go to, cool things to see. I was definitely interested. Which, I mean, I think that's what a good travel show does, right?
Yeah.
Is it gets
Yeah.
you interested in a place.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, even like he gets this local tour guide and she pretty much takes him on a food tour. And I was like, okay, like let's talk about this. And like honestly, like what she shared about the food and how she took them from place to place and shared like, this is why this food is this way, and then this is how we eat it, and this is how we prepare it and everything, and then now you can try it here. That's like a food tour right there. Like that's what I've experienced when I've gone on food tours. And so that was fantastic, although I didn't get to eat any of it, so that's kind of a bummer. But and then I think he went to different districts, and I loved that. And he talked about even like Lisbon, learning about this earthquake and seeing this newer architecture, and then seeing like, oh, but here's an area that wasn't hit by the earthquake, and being like, and that's why the buildings look really different. Interesting. So if I wanted to go there and see the older style, I would go to that region. So that was really cool. I loved when he talked about the fado music. So he talked about how in a lot of local restaurants, they sing and have typically a 12-string guitar and then a regular or 6-string guitar. And then sometimes the person singing might just be like taking a break, or they might, oftentimes it's just like a
come in
local
from the
person.
kitchen and it's just going to sing for a little bit. And,
and it's a unique style of singing and unique style of music. And so that was fun that they showed it from several places too. I liked that they showed several examples. And also I want to be a part of that night, because he was like hopping from place to place, listening to music and drinking wine. And I was like, I want to come hang out with you.
Which is so funny, because that was not, I was like, yeah, that's so not me. Like at one point he's there and the singer is like right next to his table, and he's like right there and like looking directly at her. And I was like, oh, I would feel so uncomfortable. I would feel so uncomfortable. I would rather be like on a wall in the back or something like that.
I think I'd rather be further towards the back too, unless I had a camera crew, and then I'd be like, it's fine, I'm shooting a show, we're fine.
But he also, like, shortly after that, he talks, I think he called them cloisters. Do you remember that part that he talked about? It was like an old convent or something, and it starts and you see these pictures like, okay, there's arches, and then he goes in, oh my gosh, it looked gorgeous.
The monastery?
Maybe that was it.
With the columns that look like trees?
Yes. No, I think no. The trees are at the beginning. I'm thinking of a different one. I'm thinking of the Manuelan cloisters is what he just calls them. Maybe it's connected to them, because the tree part is in a different section. So it's part of the monastery, but it's a particular part, the cloister, which is like a big square that has these giant arches that are just
beautiful,
gorgeous.
And some of that reminds me of a museum in Madrid that I went to. Some of that looked similar to that. Yeah. And then he goes to a monastery, and they have these columns that he said are supposed to be, I think, like palm trees. It was a type of a tree that he said. Yeah. And that they showed a clip of that monastery at the very beginning of the episode. And I thought for a second it was a Sagrada Familia that they were showing, because all the columns in the Sagrada Familia are supposed to be like trees, and it's supposed to be like looking up in a forest. So that was really fun, that I was like, oh, we have a similar thing here. Yeah. So, and then you gotta love a show that has bloopers at the end of the episode. Where, like, from this episode, one of the bloopers was that he was too excited when he was saying a phrase or something like that. I was like, that's so cute.
I mean, they're dad bloopers,
Oh yeah,
right? Like
they
kind of
totally
like
are. Yeah.
like the dad joke version of bloopers.
Yeah, or like home video bloopers. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
crazy, but they're
But
very fun.
they're funny.
They're
They're
cute. He's like trying to
endearing.
pour this wine and messing it. Yeah, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely fun.
So okay, so I have some questions for you then
Yes.
to wrap up this time, unless you have any other thoughts first.
Nope.
Okay. So based on the title of our podcast, Take Me With You, if you could take yourself to just one of the things that he highlights in this Lisbon episode, what would it be and why?
Just based on this episode?
Yeah.
Okay. If it's just based on just the episode, it's probably that monastery and the cloisters would probably be the one thing that I would want to go to. If it was also based on what Christy told us, then it would definitely be that
Sintra.
yeah, that day trip
Or the
up to
Penna
Sintra.
Palace.
Yeah. But just based on what I saw in the episode, it would definitely be the cloisters and the monastery. What about you?
I mean, it's got to be one of the food things.
That's
trying
what
to
I
figure
figured.
out. You know what? We didn't talk about it, but they talked about a market.
They did.
And they talked about how it's also become a food court, which I've seen in several places in Spain too, that like to keep the market in business and everything, they've also added like a food court element, but people still use it as a market. I think I would go there because then I can eat a lot of kinds of food.
And there'd be lots of people around you.
And I love a public market too. And so,
yep.
Yes.
Yep. That
Nice.
makes sense.
Okay. Did this show, or let's talk about this episode. Did this episode make you want to go to Lisbon more than you wanted to before watching it?
Yes, definitely.
Nice.
Definitely. Because I would say Portugal and Lisbon wasn't really on my radar a ton. Kind of like, remember before we started the podcast with Spain. Spain was not really on my list. Because like, okay, Spain, it's hot. I don't like hot, right? But then after hearing especially about like Barcelona and stuff like that, like there's definitely places that now I'm interested in. I would say it's similar for Portugal. I didn't really know a lot about Portugal. Definitely didn't know anything about Lisbon. It definitely looks like a cool place to go. What would you say?
Yeah. I think just seeing footage of it helps a lot, but then the things he highlights are things that I'm interested in doing and seeing. And so like that trip that he outlined, I'm like, yes, I'll take that trip. Yeah. I'm totally on board with that. And yeah, it seems like a really unique place. I mean, a place that looks like San Francisco, but is in Europe and old, but newer buildings. Like it just, I don't know. It all seems very cool. So it seems like a fun mixture of like modern and old and yeah, a really interesting place. Okay. Now I want to ask you a question about Rick Steves and his show, like more his travel style or his show in general. Would you want to travel with Rick Steves?
Ooh.
Like, do you, I mean, I know he also like produces trips or whatever. Like I've heard people like, oh, we went on a Rick Steves trip, but like just the way he travels, if he's like your buddy, are you going on a trip with Rick Steves?
Who, I mean, let's be honest. If just about anyone would take us on a trip, we're both going.
Oh, of course. Yes.
But
this isn't like, this is like
yeah.
if you have your choice of people to travel with and itineraries, like do you want to travel with Rick Steves?
I don't think Rick Steves would be my top travel choice. Just because his interests tend to be different than mine. Histories and museums, much more that he's into than I am. However, he is very comfortable in Europe. He knows a lot of people in Europe, and he could definitely have those connections to get those more personal experiences, which I think both you and I do enjoy and value in travel. And that's something that I'm not good at on my own, right? Like you put me into pretty much any country, and if I'm there by myself, I'm not walking up to strangers and introducing myself. I'm not getting to know people. You know, that's just not my default kind of personality. And so that would be something that would be very attractive to me about traveling with Rick Steves, is that that's something that he does well. And so I could kind of leech off of that or benefit from that component. So I don't know that he would be my first choice necessarily, but he would probably be near the top. Like, I don't think I would be miserable. I might be extra bored in a museum or something for a while, but
Mhm.
I think it's a good balance of activities, which I think is good.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. I would definitely travel with Rick Steves. Just like, I think we'd have a great time. Yeah.
He's all about, because he'll hook you up with all the food, Cheryl.
He's got the food, museums, entertainment, public transportation, talking to people. I don't want to read about history. I just want someone to tell me about it. Like, I just want the highlights. And I love when other people around me know things, because then they just tell me like some of it. And I'm like,
Yep.
that's a nice amount of that thing to know. Thank you. So
Yeah, that seems
Yeah.
reasonable.
Awesome. Any other final thoughts?
I would just say, especially since it's easily accessible, it's free, it's on YouTube, it's on PBS, it's on his website. You can get these episodes. They're only a half an hour long. If you're traveling someplace, or you're even wondering, hey, might I want to go someplace? I think it's a great starting point.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not going to plan your entire trip based on one 22-minute episode, but I think they're a really useful resource in getting the overall picture of a place you might want to travel.
I used his show one time when I was trying to decide between two different cities. I was like, I could visit this place or this place. And so he had an episode about both those places. And I just got to see, like, what is it like there?
Yeah.
And that helped me make my decision. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend it.
Okay, so we're going to move into the next segment of our podcast called Wish You'd Stay Home. At this point, when we're recording, we are still in a stay home, stay healthy order from the state. When this episode comes out, we might still be in a stay home, stay healthy order, or maybe it will have begun the process of lifting. We don't know. But for now, we are going to highlight some cool attractions that you can do without actually leaving your home. There's lots of cool resources and things that you can do from home that can keep you occupied and also kind of expand what you are aware of out there in the world. Cheryl, what would you like to do with your Wish You'd Stay Home?
I would like to share about a wonderful form of entertainment that has just brought joy to my day. So since we can't go to plays right now, which is very sad, just before we start recording, we talked about which tickets we had to things that are not happening anymore.
Yeah.
So Hamilton on Facebook has been putting out videos, and they're just making me so happy. So there's videos you can find of Hamilton actors when they do this daily lottery in New York. They'd go out and do some form of entertainment for the people standing in line. So they'd like do one of their songs, but just like in a microphone with like a cheap speaker or something like that. So recently, one of the ones that they released was like, hey, right now we're staying home, but check out this video that was recorded a while ago. And it was the song, was it My Shot? Is that what they did?
I don't know.
But they had a bunch of the women in the cast perform it. And so that was really fun that they just like, performed other parts, and like the guys are standing around too, and they're having a ball, and they brought out instruments too,
fun.
Which is really fun.
Oh, cool.
And so, but they're just wearing street clothes, which is like so funny since it's a period piece. Like to see them in street clothes, it's like, oh my gosh, you look very different. And they like another video they put out was that they Lin-Manuel Miranda was on John Krasinski's show, which I shared about a while ago, called Some Good News, and they kind of like bombed it, like came in, and then all of a sudden it was a whole performance of, I think it was My Shot. So it makes me think of the other video might have been another song. But and they did it like with that thing where they're all at their own, like at home wearing headphones singing their part, and then it's put all together with all these
Oh,
actors from it.
Yeah.
And they do it for this girl like who can't go to Hamilton because like she and her mom had tickets but it was canceled. And so yeah, they've just been putting out really fun stuff, and it sometimes when I see what I'm missing out on, it makes me sad, and other times it makes me really happy. And this is one of those where it makes me really happy just to see Broadway people doing awesome things. So I would just go to the Hamilton Facebook page and enjoy. How about you, Ryan?
Well, I just changed mine based on what you said because I want to keep with our theme of musical theater right now.
Okay.
Because I think you and I both love musical theater. It's super fun, and I'm very sad that I'm not getting to participate in it. But something that I've discovered, maybe it was before we were kind of told to stay home. Maybe it was after. I'm not sure. But I don't know if you're familiar with James Corden.
Yes.
The Late Late Show. And he's done a number of different bits. Not all of my family likes the way that he, kind of the caricature that he plays during these. But have you seen Crosswalk Musical?
No, I haven't.
Oh, Cheryl. Oh my gosh, it's hilarious. So here's what he does. So he gets, I believe, actual Broadway, or at least Broadway caliber actors and actresses together, and they will get costumes and sets, and they will go out into a crosswalk when the light is red, and they will perform numbers from Broadway musicals in the crosswalk. And then the lights change and they pull it all back, and then they go out and they do another one and they pull it all back. It's so, I don't know why. I think it's funny. It's enjoyable. They're musicals that you're familiar with and you know. They do one with Andrew Lloyd Webber. They like go to London and they do it in London, and they actually have Andrew Lloyd Webber there. And they do a whole bunch of things from all of his different shows. It's just, yes, okay, James Corden plays sort of a character that's kind of a prima donna type of a character. And I suppose that might get old after a little while, but if you like musicals, I really think you might enjoy it. And Cheryl, I think you would enjoy it. I think you'd find it very funny. So there's quite a few of them. If they're on YouTube, just search for Crosswalk Musical. And I think they're delightful.
I will. I'm so excited. That's wonderful. Oh, yay.
Oh, yay. Well, Cheryl, I think that's it for this episode.
All right.
We would love it if those of you listening to us would follow us on social media. We are at TMWY Podcast. That's TMWY for Take Me With You Podcast. We are on Instagram, and we are on Twitter, and we are on Facebook.
And maybe we can find a picture of us when we each traveled to our place, and see if we can find like a picture of us in front of a thing that was also in his show.
Oh,
so
that
like
could
me
be fun.
with Madrid and you with Slovenia. See if we could like find any like similar shots or locations or anything like that, and we could post those on our social media.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So follow us to see if we do that.
I was going to say, now we need to not forget to do it.
You can also email us at timwepodcast@gmail.com. Send us suggestions of travel shows we should be watching. Send us something that you are enjoying from the safety of your own home, or something that you're enjoying maybe now that everything is opened again and life is back to normal. We don't know the future. It's April 15th today.
Old tax day.
Yeah. Old tax day.
Well, because it's not tax day this year.
Yeah. But, old tax day. Just now I'm picturing a character that's like a cowboy.
Old, like white beard or
old
something.
Tax day. Yeah.
You can also call us and leave us a voicemail. You could tell us about what you pictured when you heard Old Tax Day and whether that's similar to what Cheryl and I pictured. You can call us at 406-763-8699, or another way to remember that would be 406 pod Timwe. We would love it if you would rate and review us, though please don't judge us solely on Old Tax Day. Please share about our episode on social media and also subscribe to make sure you do not miss any of our summer series as we continue to talk about different travel shows.
As always, thank you to Beth Reed Miller for the awesome artwork. You can check out more of Beth's artwork at Beth is Something. And thank you to Erica Corbin for the use of her song Round the Globe. You can listen to Erica's music wherever music is sold or streamed.
Well, that's all we got for this week. If you are allowed to go outside, please do so and enjoy it. And if not, please stay inside and stay healthy. And until next time, remember to take me with you.
Take me with you.
Can we get a sailboat chasing down the sunset as we float round and round the globe? Salty air and balmy